Hey, there you are. Hey, Vicki, how are you?
Oh, can't complain. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for awesome. So, Andrew Benioff here with Indie Congress. Despite my background, I am here in cloudy Philadelphia today, expecting a bit of a storm, but it's a lovely spring day, and very happy to have Victoria Walker joining us um, and to explore a little bit of her experiences in travel, which is exciting for us. Victoria, you joined us at our Brooklyn collab when you were with the Points guy, and we talked about travel then, which was good. Now you're out doing your own thing, but I think we maybe just as an intro, let's just talk a little bit about your background and what you're doing right now.
Yeah.
Before I actually have you answer that, though, sorry, let me add one little thing for any and all of our folks who are joining us today. If you are interested, throw in a comment or question into the comment section. It'll pop up here on our screen. I'm sort of new here to this LinkedIn Live format, so exploring as we go. But I believe comments and questions will pop up on my screen right here, and would love to get to them. So we're doing this for all of you out there, not only just for us. So please add comments and questions early and often would be great. So Victoria, let's start. Why don't we start a little bit with your background and how did you get into travel? How did you get into writing and media, and where did you start?
So I have very much the traditional journalism background. I went to journalism school. I majored in journalism, and I said I wanted to be either a reporter or an editor. And so I graduated from college in 2015, and I worked at the Washington Post, where I was covering breaking news, trending topics, all things viral news, some travel and aviation, but largely, a lot of politics and national news. And I was, during that time, it was a very stressful period, both professionally and personally. And I remember like during my lunch breaks, a lot of people would ask me for travel advice, and I would just kind of, just tweet out travel advice, talk about travel to my colleagues. And two of my colleagues actually said, why don't you start a travel blog? And it was something that I didn't really think about, didn't really think too much about until the spring of 2017, where I was like, why not? And what I ended up doing was I started the Vicki Ventures travel blog, which was the first iteration of my blog, where I was talking about travel deals, traveling around the world as a woman of color, tips and tricks on, everything from packing, how to pack your luggage to avoid having to check a bag, to credit card points and airline miles, a little bit of everything in between. But it was something that I kind of just like fell into just from honestly talking about it so much. It's something that I didn't really think I would be doing. As much as I love travel and as much as I love writing, I didn't really see a path forward for me to be able to do that for a living. And I'm very grateful that I ended up proving myself wrong in that. And so I worked on my blog for a couple of years. Had an opportunity to move to New York. I was based in DC at the time. Had the opportunity to move to New York to work for the Points guy. I was there for 2.5 years, first covering loyalty programs and points and miles. And then I was the senior travel reporter covering the pandemic's impact on travel. And then I left in February of this year to kind of embark on my freelance journey, being able to write long form, which is really what I wanted to do, be able to do more narrative storytelling. So I'm working with Afar, I'm working with a couple of other Points and Miles brands. Done some freelance pieces for Business Insider, the New York Times, working on something for Washington Post right now. So, really excited for this kind of next phase in my life is, really being a travel writer.
I love it. I love it. And it seems to me, so I mean, I don't know, it's something that you maybe I haven't thought that I haven't thought that much about it until I've met you and some other speakers at Indie Congress recently, and thinking more about travel and about hotels and hospitality. But it seems to me that the privileged few, up until recently, it's been a privileged few who could travel as easily, and I think more people are able to travel now. And realizing that the travel has been, and hotels have been, very focused on primarily the white community. That's who manages hotels and restaurants at the highest level. Those are a lot of the people that traveled uh, up until more recently, as I said. I think that is slowly changing, but to hear a voice uh, that matches the people who are traveling now, like yours, I would think would be inspirational for a lot of these younger travelers and a lot of people out there that don't want to only hear the voices of folks who don't really represent them. Do you think
Absolutely.
that's true? And do you find a
Absolutely.
connection to that?
Absolutely. There are several studies that show that, African Americans contribute billions, not millions, but billions of dollars to the travel industry every year. You see, all of these. I'm thinking back to right before the pandemic of the year of return, where people, African Americans from all over the United States and from all over the world gathered in Ghana for the year of return. I think about people traveling for historical reasons, thinking about people tracing their lineage, right? And unfortunately, before, I would say before the pandemic, we weren't really seeing a lot of representation in terms of, who was getting opportunities and who was also being marketed to by the travel industry, right? Because, even though you're not seeing folks on the forefront of travel, Black folks are traveling just as,
Of course.
just as much as, any other demographic. And yet the travel industry didn't reflect that, nor did it really do much to kind of cater to that demographic. I think the pandemic has changed a lot of this, in that we're starting to rethink who it is as a traveler, right? And so before the pandemic, a lot of marketing was really catered towards the business traveler, and business travel still hasn't rebounded during the pandemic, but leisure travel has. Right. And so a lot of people are in a lot of companies that I've spoken to are say that they're starting to rethink, who they're marketing promotions to, their marketing deals to, who they're marketing campaigns to, because again, it's not really the business traveler right now. It's, the family who only maybe travels once a year, or the family who hasn't traveled at all during the pandemic, right? And yeah, I would say it is something that is deeply important. And I hope the pandemic forced the travel industry to look inward at itself and not get too complacent, and also take a more holistic look at who they are targeting in their messaging.
Yeah, I think it's interesting when you said, that there are all these travelers out there, and I don't only mean Black. I mean other people of color. I mean more women traveling by themselves or in groups. And I feel like it's sort of when the industry is controlled and managed by middle-aged white guys like myself. I put myself right in there, and we're only focused on those people. Then we just don't even see outside of the lens that we're in. We're in this little box, and all these people are out there around us, traveling, probably more than what we look like.
Absolutely.
There are many other shapes and sizes and colors of people traveling, but the camera's not even pointed towards them. So a lot of the public doesn't even see that. So I think it's really important to widen the lens, as it were, and see who else is out there, and also for people like yourself to cover and suggest to many different constituencies what travel looks like for you and what your experience has been.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and I see. So I've gone to looked at your website a bit, and what you've been doing. You've done you have a lot of really interesting blog posts on there and things that I actually would love to ask you some questions about. But what what's something in travel right now that you find really interesting, that maybe that you're covering, that you want to explore from a journalist perspective, that you want us to sort of think about? Something that is, I don't know if it's something, I don't think, I'm not sure if it's something that's changed since COVID or not, or even if it was happening before, it doesn't really matter. But what's something you're finding really interesting that you'd like to explore?
I kind of touched on it a few minutes ago, but really the return of leisure travel, right? During the pandemic, I would say in the heights of the pandemic, and even when, a lot of travel restrictions started to wane, the biggest narrative was like, well, business travel will come back, right? Business travel will come roaring back. And that's not exactly the case because people are finding that they can do as good of a job at home versus, having to take a 6 hour flight somewhere. And companies are also realizing they don't want to necessarily pay the cost of a last minute round trip business class ticket and a last minute, expensive hotel and food and a rental car, right?
Right.
But you do have these leisure travelers who, again, some maybe their kids are still remote, and maybe they're traveling more than they would have before the pandemic. And maybe the parents are also working from home, and so they have this more flexibility than they perhaps didn't have before. I think it has we're starting to see, just people who are in and around and cover the travel industry starting to see. And then the thing about it is I kind of knew this before, but like we're really starting to see that like business travel is not going to rebound nearly as fast as we thought it would. But I have always said that leisure travel is really where the industry's focus should be on right now, because there are all of these people who have been stuck at home for well over 2 years and they want to go out. And so, the again, as I said earlier, the marketing really shouldn't just be to, a corporate account, right? It should be to the family, the single traveler, somebody who's not representing a corporate entity. And yeah, I think the biggest thing, the biggest takeaway is leisure travel. There's a lot there. And a lot of people are definitely, especially as we get, closer towards the summer, a lot of people are going to be hitting the road this summer.
So I personally, sort of my main gig is as an investor and developer of drive to leisure hospitality assets. And so I have a vested interest in, that during COVID, our hospitality assets did very, very well. Some are outside of New York. I'm also up in the Pocono Mountains and in the Hudson Valley. And those are, within 2 or 3 hours of a major market, New York and Philadelphia. And there are many markets like that around the country, Chicago and Boston and LA and San Francisco and so forth. Outside of those big cities, within a couple of hours, you can find these really amazing hospitality projects that you can go stay at. And we've done really, really well over COVID because it was hard. You couldn't travel internationally and people wanted to get out of their houses and so forth. Do you see a that I don't expect us to continue to do as well as we did over COVID. As more options open up now, you can now fly to Hawaii or France or Japan or wherever. You can definitely go around the world. But do you see these drive-to markets as sort of newly rediscovered and will still have higher levels of demand than they did it prior to COVID?
I think so. I really think so because, sure, somebody may take that big trip to Hawaii or may take that big trip to Thailand, but that may be a once a year trip, if not maybe once every 2 years. But
Yep.
destinations that travelers can drive to is something that is, especially if it's, something they can do in a weekend. You may find travelers who will do that like, once a quarter, maybe once a month, right?
Right.
I think you're also going to not everyone is traveling internationally, even with restrictions being kind of in a lot of places, a lot of restrictions have been removed, and the situation in regards to COVID has gotten significantly better than it was or even earlier this year. A lot of people are still uncomfortable traveling internationally, but people do want to travel, and so domestically, and again, places that they can specifically drive to, and they can kind of again, stay as socially distant as possible and can avoid having to fly or having to take the train. I think that, it may not be to 2021 numbers or maybe even 2020 numbers, but there is still very much a market for destinations that travelers can drive to.
Very interesting. I want to ask you. So I have another question I'm going to ask, but I'm going to throw it out there also for our audience again. Would love to get comments or questions from you. Put it in the comments there, and it comes up on my screen, and I'm happy to ask Victoria the questions. Would be great. So please do take part in the conversation. Victoria, I want to talk about luxury travel for a second. I come from a luxury hotel background. That's where I started my career, and admittedly, the properties that I am invested in and work on are not luxury any longer. I would say they're slightly sub-luxury. Maybe we in the hotel industry we'd call them upper upscale. But the luxury traveler, I feel, especially for people of your demographic, and I'm actually pointing more towards your age now. I would think that maybe they don't value that sort of standard luxury experience as much. Maybe because they don't have as much disposable income, but also because it feels a little stiffer to them. Some of those hotels are quite, proper and classic and so forth, and maybe they just don't feel as comfortable. What do travelers of your age demographic, what are they looking for? Do they want luxury? Do they want something a little less? Are they looking more for experience? What do they value?
I would say an authentic experience, right? And I have stayed in luxury resorts around the world that have both gotten this correct and gotten this incorrect. Just speaking for me personally, I always love going to a hotel that embraces the local culture instead of, just plopping a luxury hotel in the middle of nowhere and, it being very insulated and siloed. I remember a stay in Mexico in October 2020. So this is still very much, the kind of the height of things. And from the time that I checked in to the time I checked out, there was always some sort of like local element to it. So, from a guacamole making class to going on a boat tour to see the mangroves, I felt, very much, a part of that community. And ultimately, travelers, especially I would say travelers who are both Gen Z as well as the millennial demographic, which I am a part of, want an authentic experience and something that is not, just, people in suits and, things like that. So I would say, I would say our demographic of travelers still very much values the luxury experience as long as there is some sort of, as long as there's some sort of authenticness, if that's the word, if that is a word to it, and also a sustainability component, because in travel we're thinking a lot about being wasteful, and that's something that I would say our demographic is something we're definitely paying attention to.
Well, that's great because that's something that I'm very focused on in my development. So both of those things that you hit on make at least definitely strike a chord with me. Now we have a couple of questions that I want to get to here. The first one is leisure and luxury the same thing? I think I can answer it, but I want to give it to you, Victoria. What's the difference between leisure and luxury, or are they even?
I don't know if there's a difference, because I think you can define luxury as I think travelers can define luxury for themselves, right? I've stayed at hotels, or I've gone to places that wouldn't necessarily be considered luxury, but it felt like a luxurious experience to me. And so luxury can be whatever you want it to be, right? I think that's just my take. That might be it might be a kind of woo-woo take, but I think you can define luxury. I think whatever luxury is to you is what it can be.
Yeah, that's great. And I would just add that I see leisure as traveling not for business. You're traveling for pleasure on your own time. So leisure and luxury are not two things that you would compare. I would say leisure and business travel are two different things. You can have luxurious leisure and you can have non-luxurious leisure, but leisure is more of a, traveling for your own on your own time. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely.
Okay, so we have another great question from Alette Lukey, who is an old friend of mine and person I used to work with. Millette, thank you for joining us. Fantastic to have you. What hotel brands resonate with you and do you like? This is a good
So,
question.
yeah, for me, actually, I got posed this question literally just yesterday in Instagram Live. So obviously, I'm somebody in the points and miles community, so I often use my points and miles to be able to travel. I have hotel status with three hotels, Hilton, Marriott, and Hyatt. But I have Hyatt Globalist status, and that's primarily where I tend to stay. And the reason for that is because I think, and just for speaking for me personally, I've felt that like globalist status has gone further than I would say any other program that I've listed. With the free breakfast, complimentary upgrades, I typically have no problem getting upgrades wherever I travel. I mean, I would just say an overall enhanced experience versus staying at some other properties. But again, for me, I so many people can have so many different responses, and I would say I reevaluate that take that take yearly, depending on new hotels that come onto the market, whether a program is devaluing its points currency. So I would say for this year, Hyatt, and that can change.
So great, and I'd love to explore that a little bit with some of the indie brands or indie hotels of what you would consider. Um, I know they don't have these loyalty points as much as the bigger brands, Hyatt and Marriott, Hilton, etc., have. I personally love the Ace hotels, the
Love it. Love it.
proper hotels, and standard. All of those quote unquote brands, although I'm not really sure I'd call them brands, but all of those companies offer things that excite me. Bunkhouse is another great opportunity for. Are there ones in the indie space that you like? You just said you like is Ace is
I
one of those.
I will say I love the Ace Hotel in New York. And I particularly love a dog-friendly hotel. I am a proud dog owner. And when I'm choosing hotels, even when I'm choosing staycations in New York City, I have to look for something that is dog-friendly. Because my vacation is also my dog's vacation, and I don't necessarily want to have to board him. And so I love the Ace Hotel in downtown Brooklyn because it's dog friendly. And not only is it just dog friendly, there's like programming for dogs, right? There's like treats and things like that. So it's not just a hotel that says it's dog friendly, it's actually dog friendly.
The by the way, the picture on your website of I think it is Migo is
Yes, it is me.
maybe the cutest picture of dog I've ever seen in my life. If anybody wants to go take a look at it, go to travelwithvicky.com with two K's, not a CK, two K's, travelwithvicky.com. Go to her blog and take a look at Migo and tell me if that is not the cutest dog ever.
He
Okay.
is the cute. I will tell him you said that. I'm literally looking at him fast asleep on my couch. He's not supposed to be on my couch, but he's on the couch, fast asleep.
Okay. Well, I wish he wasn't asleep. I wish you could have brought him on here. We'd love to have him as a guest. Maybe
Come
we should
here.
interview Migo next
Come
time.
here. Come here. Oh, I just woke him up.
Okay.
Come here.
Okay. So Migo might come on right now. That would be good.
Come here, buddy.
She's going to come back in a second.
Say hello.
Okay. There's Migo.
Hello.
Hey, Migo. How are you?
Hi.
So cute. And he has his bow tie on. It's fantastic.
Say hello.
Yes. There is another question on here that I'd love for you to consider, Victoria, which is, do you consider amenities and toiletries as part of an authentic experience?
I think it can be, especially if a hotel is working with local brands. I would say that's something I do look for. Like, again, the last thing travelers who are looking for authentic experiences want is like to stay in a hotel and then that again kind of just popped up in the middle of nowhere and has no connection to the community around it.
Yep.
And so amenities, toiletries, I would say if these things have some sort of, local component, if I'm staying at a hotel that offers a welcome gift of like a bottle of wine, I would ideally hope that it is, from, the local community. So I think so.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. I think that's really amazing. One of the things, obviously, you used to work for the Points Guy, TPG, and one of the things they're famous for is like talking about how do you use your points and where how you can get a good deal on credit cards and all this kind of stuff. On one of your posts on your newsletter, there's a thing here that shows you paid, or somebody paid $265 for a ticket from Washington Dulles International to Dubai. Is that a real ticket?
That was real tickets, and that's how I got into both points and miles and deals. So it was my senior year of college. This was Christmas Day 2014, and a friend called me at like maybe 4 a.m. on Christmas Day. So I pick up and I'm thinking somebody died because there's no way in the world you call me at 4 o'clock in the morning. And she's like, "Get up! You have to book there's this insane, crazy mistake fare from DC to Abu Dhabi for like $200. You have to book it right now." And I remember this was before I had like, rewards credit cards. I booked this ticket on a debit card. And I booked like two other tickets for my friends. One of my friends didn't even have a passport at the time. And it ended up being, I would say, the mistake fare of a lifetime. It was priced incorrectly by the airline. It's easily a, $1,000 ticket in economy that we were able to get for $265 round trip. And, for weeks we were sitting there thinking that the airline is going to cancel the ticket. And then ultimately Etihad announced that it would honor all of those tickets. And so I spent my 22nd birthday in Abu Dhabi. And it was one of the, like, I would say one of the best experiences, one of the best travel experiences that I'd had, because it really showed me that travel can be accessible. I had, before I was in college, I was a broke college student. I didn't think like, I could go to like Dubai for the cost of, a flight from DC to LA. Right. And that's really what got me into chasing, good travel deals, mistake fares, and then, kind of monitoring that space led me into points and miles because I, as much as I loved good deals, I also wanted to find a way where I didn't have to pay for airfare at all.
Mm-hmm.
And so I started to learn as much as I could about points and miles, and that's what got me into points and miles. But I'm still very much, a good deals person. I send out a deals newsletter every week or so ish. Because I think that is the best way to get people excited about travel. If there's one thing that I remember about the Etihad mistake fare glitch was that so many people who were not the prototypical traveler got to go to Abu Dhabi because of it. There were so many people who were like, I booked my mother's never left the country and I'm taking her on a 10-day trip to Dubai. Or, people were like, I booked my entire family on this trip to Dubai. Right. And so many people who, again, maybe for whatever reason, may not have been able to go to Dubai any other time in their lives, ended up in Dubai in between 2014 and 2015. It was one of the best experiences of my life, and I would say one of my best, like easily a travel highlight, easily.
That's amazing. Well, travel is one of the great equalizers, and it really helps to open your eyes about other people and human beings. And we realize when we travel, I think that we are much more alike than we are different, and cancels a lot of fear about other countries and other people because we realize we're all human beings. So I think it's super important. We're pretty much at our limit here, Victoria. But before I let you go, I want to ask you one more question. You know, obviously over the last couple of years, I'm not going to, we don't need to really talk about COVID too much, but over the last 2 years, it's been pretty difficult time for a lot of businesses, a lot of people, people changing jobs, people quitting their jobs, limited travel, economic issues, medical issues, all that kind of stuff. So a lot of difficulty, I would say. But I'd love to ask you what you think are some of the bright points or one of the bright points on the horizon that you see from your position and from your desk when you're out there looking and talking about travel and writing about it, thinking about it. What's a positive thing that you're seeing right now?
I kind of alluded to this, but again, people who weren't really travelers before now thinking about travel and now traveling, people who are saying life is too short, I want to be able to see the world on my own terms, and I'm going to, so many people started, and I hate the term bucket list, but so many people started bucket lists and actually like kept to them after quarantine. So many people were saying like, I don't care what it takes, I'm going to start traveling now. I saw that in my own family. I had family members who didn't really consider, traveling, were content with, you know, um, their lives, and, very much content. And now, or we're then saying, and there's nothing wrong with that at all, but they're now saying like, hey, I want to experience the world. I want to, eat new food, meet different cultures, see different places. And, I have a cousin who reaches out to me often about, just like, hey, I'm thinking about this new destination. Can you tell me something about it? I get this a lot. I get this a lot from like friends who, again, didn't consider traveling before. And I think that is, I would say, the real bright spot of the pandemic, and that is introducing travel to so many people. And it is, at least for a while, it got a lot cheaper to be able to do so. And I think that's, ultimately, I think travel is something that should be accessible. Travel is something that everybody should be able to do if they want to do it. And I think we're starting to move to a place where that is possible.
Amazing. That's great. Thank you for that great insight. I love it. Victoria, I really want to thank you for joining us today. It was a great
Thank you so much for
conversation.
having me.
For all of you who joined us today, really excited to start this new journey on LinkedIn Live. We're going to be back up in another couple of weeks with another guest. As you can see at the bottom of the screen, Indie Cultivate coming up June 20th and 21st in Brooklyn, New York at the Wythe Hotel. Join us there. It's going to be great conversations. We're already booking some amazing speakers, and tickets are on sale. You can see it at ilcongress.com. And we'll see you again soon right here. Thanks for joining us, everybody. Have a great day. Vicki, thank you very much. Have a good afternoon. Take